Good morning, everyone. We're back with more PodFest Asia. How are you, my friend?
Very good. How you doing?
Fantastic. I just had a short nap because I've been live streaming since last night. I think roughly 2:30 a.m. Singapore time, right until 5:30 a.m. So I'm refreshed and all set to go.
Good.
I know that you're in Bournemouth, which is south coast of England, right?
Yeah, about an hour and a half from London on the coast.
Fantastic. And, just for the benefit of those who are listening in or watching this on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook, my next speaker is a true rock star because he chats with rock stars, events legends, sporting icons, comedians, you name it, yeah. And also the sharpest minds in business and entrepreneurship on his podcast, The Eventful Entrepreneur. So, Roger Woodall, welcome once again.
Yeah, it's lovely to be here, Wayne. It's 12:30. It's just gone past midnight in here in England.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. And I know that it's near your bedtime already. So I'm fully 100% appreciative of your
no worries at all.
Doing this with us together. Yeah.
No worries. My pleasure.
So I know that you have a love affair with entrepreneurship and you have been creating live events for over 20 plus years, right? With many people. And of course, you had fantastic guests on your show. People like Piers Morgan, Harry Redknapp, Frank Lampard, Rod Stewart, and Jamie Redknapp, just to name a few. And you're also the founder of this fantastic, huge event. In fact, it's the largest sport and music festival in the world called Bournemouth 7 Festival. Tell us more about the story of Bournemouth 7 Festival.
Yeah, it launched. We launched the festival in 2008. It's a sport and music festival. So it's 30,000 people in a field partying for 3 days with 12 festival arenas with dance tents and 80s tents and lots of genres of music. There's 400 competing teams across rugby, netball, hockey, dodgeball, and volleyball. And it's just a festival for like-minded people down here in England, and always the last bank holiday of May every year.
Sounds like a really happening festival, and someone like me, right, will definitely enjoy a festival like that because I love sport and music. So it's not known as the Sporting Glastonbury for no reason, right? Because there are like 30,000 people, like you mentioned.
30,000.
30,000. And how many matches going on at the same time?
There is, in 2 days, there's 1,500 matches being played.
Wow. So between so many teams, right? And it's like having so many festival arenas in 3 days. And according to you, it's also one big party, right? So what actually went down, during your recent podcast? Because I know that you interviewed so many great people on your podcast. Let's start with maybe Ross Stewart, right? Is he really an amazing down-to-earth bloke?
Oh my God. I can't speak highly enough of Rod Stewart. He's 75 years old, one of the biggest rock legends the world has ever seen. And he just loves his football. He's down to earth. He takes the mickey out of himself, takes the mickey out of other people. He's just a really good man. And I could have spent hours, I could have spent all day with him chatting sport and his partying and his antics that he got up to and the helicopters and aeroplanes and private jets he owns. And but he's really down to earth because he started with nothing. He was busking in London, for free. And, look what he's made of himself. Unbelievable story.
Wow. So that must be one hell of an episode. And what are some of his funny stories from like packing out stadiums worldwide to becoming Sir Rod, for example?
Yeah, he got knighted by, I think it was Prince William. And got knighted with the sword over his shoulders. And I think he went in there. He said on the podcast, he went in there half cut. He'd been drinking all afternoon before he went and got his knighthood.
That's a
typical rock star for you, man. They can do whatever they want,
Yeah.
And he's got some great stories. He was telling me about packing stadiums out for 100,000 people all around the world in different countries. He's a huge Celtic football fan. And he's jumped on planes to go and watch when he's got a concert somewhere in Vegas. he'd jump on a plane to another country just to watch a Celtic football match on TV and then get a private jet back again. And just, just brilliant stories, and about how so many women have thrown their knickers at him while he's on stage singing over the last 40 years to him at the end of each concert, where he would kick out 200 footballs out into the stadium and everyone would get the football. And he said he had to stop doing that because what was happening is people would get the footballs as they're walking out the stadium, people were ripping them off and stealing them off and causing problems. So he had to stop doing that. But yeah, he's a great guy, and he's got a full-size football pitch in his house outside, just on his garden, that he's had all the different football clubs there training. Yeah, he's a top man. I can't speak highly enough of him.
I think I'm trying to imagine, the scenes when he's like and living, all these stadiums, not just with his live performances, but even when he's attending those football matches, right? He's not just an entertainer, but it's so entertaining to people who are around him. And listening to you telling these stories is making, me feel goosebumps immediately, right? So it's like we can maybe re-experience that by listening to your podcast episode interview with Rod Stewart.
Yeah.
How about Piers Morgan? We know that he's someone that is either you love him or you loathe him, right? So how did the chat go?
Well, it was interesting because I got asked. Obviously Harry Redknapp is an A-list celebrity here in England. He's a ex-football manager, and everyone loves him. Everyone loves Harry, and Harry and I interviewed Piers, and it was weird because Piers is the biggest interviewer in the world. But to get me to interview Piers, the interviewer, was quite a weird feeling. But you know what? When walking into the podcast, I was thinking, I wonder what he's going to be like, because on telly, he doesn't sit on the fence. He says it how it is, and I've always liked him, and so I went there with an open mind. And what a lovely man! He's got story after story after story, and he loves his Arsenal Football Club. He talks highly of Ronaldo. Obviously, he's interviewed every major celebrity in the world. He had his own TV show in America. One of the biggest stars that he's friends with Donald Trump. I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it was just interesting chatting to him, and him playing golf with Danny DeVito and all these A-list stars. He just had so many stories, and you know what? He was a really down-to-earth, good bloke.
And it seems to be a common theme, right? Most of the guests are all very nice, down-to-earth bloke, and it's only through conversations and through interviewing these people then you realize that they're not just big stars with huge ego, but they're actually quite down-to-earth as well. But was it a really hilarious chat, or is a heated spat? We know that sometimes we're watching him on TV, right? He gets into heated spats with so many of his guests. So he's behaving really well when he's guesting on your show instead?
Yeah, he was brilliant. I could have spoken to him for hours. He was just like your uncle. Your uncle who just loves his sport, loves his football, loves his cricket, loves stories, loves being around celebrities, doing really good stuff in the UK. But, he riles people up the wrong way, because if he didn't, he wouldn't be the superstar he is. If he sat on the fence every day that he's on Good Morning Britain or whatever channel it is in England in the morning, if he just sat on the fence and agreed with everyone, no one would bother watching. But that's why he gets his viewings ratings super high.
100%. I think that's part of his DNA to actually, voice out his perspective, his point of view. And sometimes, we can agree to disagree, right? And it's not just about tuning out opposing views. It's important to actually hear the other side as well. So, any tips that he shared from interviewing the Juventus football star Ronaldo?
Yeah, he was saying about Ronaldo, lovely guy, and he was, Ronaldo's physique is unbelievable. Is unbelievable. He's a specimen of a man, and he was saying, who's the best player in the world? Is it Pele? Is it Maradona? Is it Ronaldo? Is it Messi? And Ronaldo said the reason why he's a better player than all of those others, because he's played at the top of his game for 15 years, where Maradona and Pele didn't play at the top of the game for 15 years. Ronaldo's been banging in 40-odd goals a season, every season for years and years and years. And he's kept himself fit. He hasn't been caught out partying. He hasn't been going at nightclubs. He's been focused purely on his football, and that's why he's been a huge success for Manchester United, for Real Madrid, now Juventus, winning cups with Portugal, his country. You know, he's ticked every single box you could ever tick. Maybe not winning the World Cup, but who knows? The way he's going, he could probably play to the age of 40. He's so fit.
He's definitely an amazing footballer. I think definitely we put him on the same pedestal as other great footballers like Diego Maradona, the late great Diego Maradona. And of course, we should appreciate these players when they're still alive, right? And still performing on a pitch for a top club like Juventus. And I used to hate him because he plays for Manchester United. And being a diehard Liverpool fan, right? He's always scoring against my team and always winning league titles with Man United. But you have to admire, how great a player he was and he still is. So moving on, let's talk about Harry Redknapp. So it's like we know that to be asked to be the co-host with the former Spurs manager, right? It's definitely a thrill for you. How did it start? What's the story behind doing a podcast together with Harry Redknapp?
Yeah. I launched my podcast, The Eventful Entrepreneur, 16 weeks ago, and it's gone viral very quickly around the UK because I'm interviewing really cool entrepreneurs and finding out about their stories and business in life, sporting and the highs and lows and the pressures. And I've told my story on 3 of the episodes, and it's really resonated with a lot of people who are entrepreneurs who have taken risks and risking remortgaging our family home to put on a festival. So it's really hit a lot of people in the UK. And I got a phone call on a Monday night from the production company who put on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here on my mobile. And they said, hey, is that Roger Woodall? I said, yes. I said, can we come and see you tomorrow in Bournemouth? I would like to have a chat. I was like, yeah, of course. Why not? And they came down and said, we listened to your podcast. We love how real you are, how raw it is, and some great information, great questions. Would you like to co-host a new show? It's called The Harry Redknapp Show. And I was like, 100% I would love to. And then the following day, it was myself, Harry Redknapp, and our first guest was Frank Lampard. And then the second guest was Piers Morgan, and the third guest was Rod Stewart, and the fourth guest was Eddie Hearn, who looks after Anthony Joshua and the biggest boxing promoter in the world. And the list goes on. And it was just spending day after day with Harry and all these guests was just a dream come true. It really was. It came at the right time as well with the whole pandemic, and it really brought spirits high. And me and Harry just laughed and laughed and laughed. We get on really well, and it was amazing, absolutely amazing.
So this has definitely turned out to be something of a exciting, should I say, an exciting move and exciting development for you, despite, with the pandemic that's happening, right? Of course, we are definitely not thrilled to see people dying from COVID or people getting COVID and affected or impacted by it because of this, especially the business or the job aspect of it, right? But it's been a crazy 12 months, having to endure this pandemic for many people out there. And you are someone who have actually gone through that impact of COVID because you had to postpone and then cancel a 30,000 people sold out Burnomus 7's festival, right? But it's also brought you some amazing opportunities. Maybe walk us through some of your experience during the past 12 months.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster over 12 months. When you've worked, 12 years solid working on a festival, you risk everything. 362 days of the year, you're working solid for the risk of 3 days of the year. There's not many businesses that I know in the world that risk 362 days for 3 days to earn all your money. And it's been going extremely well for us. We've been growing out to 30,000 people, and it's amazing the way it's gone. And then when pandemic comes, there's nothing we could do. We had to cancel the festival last year. And but I didn't sit. I've been around the block. I didn't sit on my hands and start crying and thinking, well, I've been in a recession before. It's like, right, back's against the wall. What do I need to do? Right, I need to brand myself. I've got lots of knowledge in the events industry and entrepreneurship. So I branded myself the Eventful Entrepreneur. So building the website, building the podcast. And the podcast was like, well, let's see how it goes. But you can only tell a good podcast by the amount of reviews you get and the written reviews you get on Apple. There's no other way to judge a podcast these days, apart from the written reviews, in my opinion. And these written reviews were phenomenal. Every day coming in. I was like, oh my God, I'm onto something here. So I was interviewing some really cool people, celebrities and really good entrepreneurs. And it's all stemmed from there. And in the meantime, we're building an online events course that's going to go global. We've just got it rubber stamped by CIM, which is Chartered Institute of Marketing, which allows us to go global. It's a really cool events course where we're bringing in 40 of the best industry experts to do an online course to be filmed. The experts are the main people of Boardmasters Festival, Chelsea Football Club, or the Olympics, or London Marathon. They're all coming in, and we're creating this high-ticket course because we identified that the universities were charging the students £27,000 for 3-year events management course, and the students were leaving with £50,000 worth of debt, and that took them 3 years. So we identified, why don't we do an online course that can take 3 months? We'll teach you more in 3 months, and you're learning a 3-year degree at a fraction of the price and a fraction of the time, bringing you industry experts who are in the game today. So that's what we're building right now, and that's what we will be launching in March this year. And we are hoping this is going to go global across the America, Canada, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And who knows, it could go to Asia as well.
This is brilliant to hear, and of course, it's one of those very inspiring stories, especially for entrepreneurs like you, right? Who actually came out of a pandemic with even new events and new virtual events that brings even more incredible people together in the same space. So I think that's only possible because we have the technology and also grew new skill sets to actually enable such events to even happen. And you came up with the idea and you had the execution. And of course, you've been grinding also by doing a lot of podcast shows, right? So all these are just another way for you to see more action.
Absolutely. I've thrown over 1,500 events, my own events that I've owned around the UK for 10 years and done a festival now, put on a festival for the last 13 years. I can't wait to get back to throw a party for people. I create experiences for people, thousands, and I've sold over 1 million tickets, to my own events. I create brilliant experiences and I can't wait. It's been taken away from me. And that feeling when something's taken away from you inspires me even more when I come back to throw even bigger and better festival for people. So I'm chomping at the bit to get back and create some more experiences for 30,000 people in the field. And I know our customers and loyal fans can't wait for it to happen too.
And we can't wait, even right here in Asia, if you could bring it, make it available for our Asian audiences in this part of the world. That'd be fantastic. And of course, I had to ask you this question. Did you think that your podcast shows would go viral so quickly and you'll be sitting on the same page as Gary Vaynerchuk or Tim Ferriss in the top 3 Apple podcasts in Great Britain?
No. To put it bluntly, no. I'm just me. I'm not a TV presenter. I'm not trying to be anyone. I'm just me. And when your back's against the wall, all I can be was authentic, show my vulnerabilities that we lost the festival. We lost a hell of a lot of money. And I've just told my story. I've been private for all my life. And now I've gone public and told my story. And my story is resonating with lots of people around the UK and around the world because it's a real entrepreneur's story. From a physical business, not an online business where people are earning money online in the last 2-3 years. This is a proper entrepreneur from the age of 10 years old, so building businesses in the sports and events industry and selling sportswear brands and building brands. And, it's real stuff.
Fantastic. 100% real. And that's what's more riveting to experience and to hear from the man himself, from you. And of course, what other, great rock star or comedians or footballer stories could you share with our Asia-based audiences?
Oh, there's lots of stories. Eddie Hearn and Barry Hearn, who look after Anthony Joshua, talking about the Anthony Joshua fight with Tyson Fury, where that's going to be held. They think that's going to be held in, there's a number of options there. there's just stories after stories. I've had the most amazing guests, and I'm only 16 weeks in.
Wow.
16 weeks into podcasting. Check out the Apple reviews, Wayne, and take a read, and you'll see what people are saying about it. The 5 stars written reviews, there's hundreds of them. There's nearly 400 now in just 16 weeks. And to get people to actually write a review is very difficult. People might just press the 5 star or 4 star or 3 star, but actually they're writing reviews because they've been inspired.
Amazing. And of course, we have to back it up a little bit and go back to when you first started, right? Even before you built your first Buttermilk Sevens festival, did you have to hustle in the beginning to like build a resume for what you are doing now? And did you have to like give up or make sacrifices? Like, for example, give up a high-paying job or career to do what you love?
I've never had a job. I've never been employed. I grew up in pubs in London, above pubs in London. And I learned my trade from a 10-year-old. We had a nightclub next door. I would go to the manager on a Saturday and buy 20 tickets off him for £1. And this is at the age of 10. I'd go into my dad's pub and sell the tickets for £2. And those people would then go to the nightclub and they would jump the queue. The nightclub would earn their £1. I would earn my extra £1. This is a 10-year-old. So every Saturday night it was £20 in an hour's work. And the businesses have just grown. The funny thing is, Wayne, that was 34 years ago. I'm doing the same thing, selling tickets and queue jump and VIP tickets 34 years later. I've done that all my life on all my events. So I learned my trade as a 10-year-old, and that's a proper entrepreneur, and as I was growing up, entrepreneur wasn't a cool word. No one knew what it was. People just thought, what's entrepreneur? They didn't understand. You got to remember, entrepreneur in the last 5 years has become the coolest thing around. You had rock stars in the 90s. You had footballers in the 2000s. Rock stars and footballers and entrepreneurs were down here. Entrepreneurs are at the same level now. And the rock stars and the footballers want to be entrepreneurs. So it's gone full circle. And I'm absolutely loving it. And that's why we called the podcast The Eventful Entrepreneur, because that's been my world.
And that's a great backstory of how that eventful podcast, the name actually come about. And we know that you have many superhero stories, right? So you also mentioned about, how you started selling tickets even at age 10, and that probably ignited your passion about what you do now. Am I right to say that again?
100%. I love bringing people together. I love creating win-win scenarios in business. Everyone, if you can do a good business, it's about a win-win. It's about relationship. It's about making people happy. I like making people happy. I like creating fun for people and experiences. And that's what I've done. That's what I've done all my life from a young kid. And it's only been the last 3 months since I've become public and told people about my story that's probably the reason why it's gone viral very quickly. I've kept myself private, Wayne, for all these years, and now my back's against the wall. Everyone keeps talking about personal brand. I didn't want to use my name, so I went for the Eventful Entrepreneur. I felt comfortable with that, and who knows where it's going to take me, but loads of doors have opened since I've gone public.
So was the idea behind doing podcasting you're doing, or was it the Harry Redknapp, or was it somebody else's idea or suggestion, or is it something that you just knew that, I should go into podcasting right now?
I didn't know what podcasting was till about 4 months ago. Didn't have a clue. I was just like, everyone's going podcast. I went, converted our office, one of the rooms in the office, into a podcast studio. And we thought, let's do it properly. So we created a brilliant studio with a 4K cameras. Check out my Instagram, The Eventful Entrepreneur. You'll see the high level of videos that we do. And we just gave it a go. I'm well connected. There's no one I don't know. I'm one phone call away from most people in the UK. We've got a good set of friends who have got some great stories. And I got them in and we spoke and it worked. So that gave me confidence when I saw the Apple reviews, written reviews, how much people were loving it. So I thought, well, let's carry on. And that's when the Harry Redknapp opportunity came. And all of this has happened in a short period of just 16 weeks. And I'm launching a YouTube channel next week as well. And we're really going for it. I've got a full-time producer, full-time video editor. And who knows where we're going to go with this, Wayne, but I'm really enjoying the journey because it's allowed me to have quality conversations with really inspiring, good people to, I love people. I love asking questions. I love to delve deeper. And I've just done it in my style. I haven't tried to be any sort of special presenter. I've just done it in my style. I've freestyled it and it seems to be working. So I'm just going to stick with what I'm doing.
And before we let you go, we only have like 3 minutes left. Share with our audience, what are your 3 biggest learnings?
3 biggest learnings. Don't take life too seriously, because I don't. Have lots of fun, because business is about fun. And for some reason around the world, business is too serious. Everyone's scared of what to say or what not to say, or can I ask that question? Am I going to look stupid to ask a question? And my 3rd one is always ask brilliant questions, because the best leaders ask the best questions to get the best answers.
Amazing. Beautiful sharing. So I want to thank you once again for agreeing to do this. It has been effortless doing this kind of program with you, and just love riffing with you even more maybe in the future, and have you back again on this festival so we can tell us what you're up to. And what kind of fantastic, stories you have actually heard while making your podcast on the Eventful Entrepreneur, and of course, when co-hosting with Harry Redknapp on his Harry Redknapp podcast. Yeah. So thank you, sir, and I hope to see you very, very soon. You take care over there and take care of one another. You're
a good man, Wade. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. You're a great host.
Thank you, sir. I'll see you very soon. Goodbye. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, hi, Wayne.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Sorry, here I am. That was quick.
It's great that you're calling in and then saying hi to our audience, and of course, giving us a chance to get to know what you do. And Lauren Rose Kocher, I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Yeah, that's it's Kocher, but that's fine. It's good.
Kocher, as in Lauren Kocher Rose, right?
Yeah.
That's great. Tell us where exactly you are right now at this moment.
Sure. So I'm sitting here in Tokyo, near Roppongi, in the Zyko office. Just like everyone else, we're working mostly remotely, but a couple times a week, most people will stop into the office. So
I have so many fond memories of Roppongi, not just because it's a very interesting part of the city, but that's the place where I remember I was there in 2002 during the World Cup. That was held in Japan and Korea, obviously. I think they played Belgium, or was it some other team in the quarterfinals? And I think all the Japanese people, which is kind of, different from their culture. Normally they are quite reserved. But they just, I think, beat their opponent. So they were out on the street celebrating in Roppongi. And I was like, out celebrating with Japanese fans as well. That was in 2002, 19 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, World Cups, that will happen. And then recently, usually when Halloween happens, everyone comes onto the street in Shibuya and gets dressed up. And not last year, though. Nobody on the street last year. So.
Yeah, which is a little bit sad. But of course, the pandemic is where everyone's stuck at home. Like what you and we are basically doing, talking to each other over our screens. And it's something that we have to adapt, right? And even though these are not permanent, we just got to endure and adapt, grow, and evolve from this. And I know that your company has been doing a lot of great stuff. Tell us about what's a day in the life of your role in your company.
Sure. So our company is called Zyko, like Zaiko, and it's a Japanese word that means inventory. We got started in 2019 as a e-ticketing, digital ticketing company for sort of real world events. But then because of last year, we had to change our business to streaming events. So now we sell tickets to live streams, and that's the core of our business. So, I mean, a day in my life, it's just, we're in a very lucky and privileged position to be growing so fast because of our digital pivot. And so we have a lot of new people coming into the company. And every week there's sort of new employees. So it's really trying to help the organization adjust to like so many rapid changes so quickly. And I spend a lot of energy trying to take care of that.
So we know that your company, before you joined the company, you graduated from University of Chicago, right? So how did you actually end up in Japan and in Roppongi working in such a cool company called Zyco?
Yeah, so I studied Japanese in university. Wayne, do you speak any Japanese? No?
Hardly.
Okay.
I can only name a few Japanese actors, actresses, singers, or footballers, like Minamino. That's all.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I studied Japanese sort of on a whim. Like I thought it would be interesting. And then I graduated and I moved to Japan and I taught English for a year. And no plan really. But I got very lucky and I got a job at a concert promoter. And so sort of similar to your previous guest, like my start was really in the event industry, handing out flyers and selling tickets and working on tours of international artists coming to Japan. So it's a famous concert promoter called Kyoto, Tokyo. And I was there for a couple years. And and I had such a good time working in the music industry, the event industry, living in Japan, that I stayed and I got another job at Sony Music, where I worked in business development for 6 years. And then after that, about 2.5 years ago, I'm actually one of the founders of Zyco. So didn't just find this place, but helped to make it. And so 2 years ago, I left Sony and with some people I've known a long time, decided to make a ticketing company. And that's what it was at the time. Now it's like much, much bigger. But yeah, and so then we started Zyco. So it's kind of the third thing I've done in Japan.
And as they say, the rest is history, right? Because we know that sometime in March 2020, during the height of the pandemic, right, Zyco introduced live streaming ticketed events to the Japanese market. And since then has become the de facto market leader with over 5,000 stream events on the platform. And I think a cool $25 million has been returned back to artists in 2020 alone. So maybe tell us, how has COVID actually impacted or changed live events in Japan?
Yeah, so like the rest of the world, it just has like completely hurt the live event industry. And we're in such a lucky position, but it is really hard to see the clients in the industry we care about struggle so much because, last year, just every single event, every single festival, Fuji Rock and so on, they all were canceled. All the customers were refunded. A lot of the venues here are having a really difficult time staying open. And so, it was for us too, because if we wouldn't have found an alternative, our ticketing company would have been in very big trouble. But also we saw, our clients, these important people to us that we work with who were really, really struggling. And we thought, what can we do for them too? So the idea was when you buy a ticket, instead of the sort of normal ticket information, just put a video inside that e-ticket and then people can buy ticketed access to a video. And then they can still go to the event. You're still buying a ticket and going to the event. I think when you do something like pay-per-view, it actually isn't very exciting because you're just buying a video. What we're doing is we're selling a ticket to a digital event. It's as a consumer behavior, it's more exciting and it's something people are used to. And so we thought, here's a way for us to do something for ourselves, for our clients. Maybe this will work. And it worked so much better than we could have ever imagined. And so, yeah, we've done over 5,000 events. I think the number of the amount of revenue that we've paid back to artists and venues and organizers is more close to $40 million at this point.
Wow.
And yeah, by any measure, the volume and the scale of what we're doing, we're a market leader and honestly, maybe a world leader at this point. We feel pretty confident. So.
I remember, Fuji Rock Festival, right? That's the event that I was supposed to attend. I think last year it was supposed to come around, I think April, or was it March? Or could even be later, yeah. And everyone was hoping to attend the Fuji Rock Festival because bands like Deftones or even Iron Maiden were touring Japan at the time, and it was sadly cancelled. So Zico actually came in and actually provide that technology support, and of course, you have actually changed how live events can continue, right, in Japan. So maybe could you advise even podcasters like me, or some of the other podcasters out there, should we also explore live streaming event and virtual meet and greets to grow and engage our listenership? Which means that this is not just confined or just restricted to people who are giving live concerts, virtually, but even podcasters can actually get into the game by working together with Zico.
That's a great point. So my background is so music industry that I'm always talking about the music. But if you look at what's on our platform and who our clients are, there's a lot of comedy, there's a lot of theater, there's a lot of talk shows. There's some stuff that's very similar to TV, and then there's some sort of like film premieres. There's some fitness. So it's a lot of different types of events. So I would say genre-wise, everyone is welcome. And it works for everyone. And then I think in terms of, maybe the business model, it's interesting about when Corona first happened. You remember all those artists did, shows on Instagram Live and Facebook, but they're all for free. You know what I mean? And the thing there's several problems with that, or there may be an advertising revenue model, but the first problem is clearly you can't make a living when you're doing free events on Facebook. But the other thing that's interesting is that the production quality goes down. When you sell tickets to an event that's going to be held a month or 2 months from now, you can see, okay, how many tickets have we sold? Let's get a great camera. Let's book another special guest. You have a budget to work with for the event production, where if you're doing a free video or even a free video with tipping options, a lot of like the Asian streaming platforms have very good tipping functions, and even Instagram and stuff has tipping now, and YouTube has the tipping, but you don't know how much revenue your event generated until everything's done. So you end up doing these events for free that, again, no one would pay for. It kind of devalues the entire experience. Where even if you only had 500 people paying $10, that's still a budget you can work with, and you can make something that is worth it for those people paying money to join online. So I think it's really a question of sort of what is the strategy around like the type of content you're making, and then how you want to interact or monetize your audience. And there's a million ways to do it, but I think that only free or only ad revenue sponsored is definitely not the way to go.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I think you actually nailed it on the head, especially with your answer about how, all these content creators, right, or live performers, or musicians or artists, they should always, look at this as a way to sell tickets first, to know exactly the budget where they can put on a really fantastic show, right? Just like how when all these cool bands were touring around the world, even doing stadium tours, and they could afford to bring in like a huge stage production because they already know how many tickets they're going to sell.
Yes.
And this is going to help them and also keep more people in jobs, obviously, because we know the event industry has really tanked during the pandemic, especially those who are doing live events, in-person events. And many people...
Audio engineers, sound engineers, right? Those types of people, yeah.
Exactly. They are the first to lose the jobs. And with this technology, and of course, you're going to have to also tell us and maybe share with us what Zico Borderless is and how even podcasters, festivals, artists, and musicians could reach a global audience through Zico Borderless.
Sure. So, Zico, even before we made a new product called Zico Borderless, has always been very global and international and diverse. The employees we have are from all over the world. It's about half Japanese people and then half people from everywhere else. Taiwan, Korea, Hong Kong, America. It's very France, Peru, Morocco. So, the people building the system are very diverse. And then the most basic functions of Zyko, both sort of consumer facing and on the back end, are all multilingual. So, you can use Zyko in English or Japanese or Korean or Chinese just by changing the language. And also you can, use Alipay or WeChat Pay. It's a very friendly, flexible platform, which is so unusual in Japan. It's very hard to do things in Japan if it's not in Japanese, So that kind of makes us stand out. But at the same time, the market we're developing and the artists we work with are so heavily Japanese, and the consumers we buy. So we came up with a new product called Borderless, where the idea is you can set up an event, and then you can sell it across the world in different currencies. And you can also set different prices. So the price for a streaming event in Japan these days is 30 or 40 US dollars. It's very high. But in Indonesia, that might not be the right price, and maybe your fans in Indonesia really, really want to come to this event or to watch your show, but it's not the right price for the market compared to what price you should set in Japan. So the Borderless product allows you to have multiple prices and multiple currencies to fit each local Asian market in the best way. And it's really a one-of-a-kind thing. And it's also supported by a network of marketing and advertising partners across Asia. And so we're when events, it's very sad that events aren't happening in the real world, but having events online means that now anybody can join. You don't have to come to the place. I mean, it's obvious, but it's a chance to build digital global events that literally people all over the world can join. And so we're kind of, Zyko Borderless is one of our first steps to building the infrastructure that people would need to put on an event like that. So if anyone's interested, reach out anytime.
This is fantastic. I think it's brilliant. And maybe you could also walk us through, how did Zyko become the de facto market leader with over 5,000 stream events already on your platform? And you mentioned about 40 million US dollars being returned back to artists in 2020 alone, right? How was this achievement? How did you achieve this achievement?
So we were really lucky in a lot of ways. Because our first year of the company before streaming as a ticketing company, we had infrastructure around things like customer support. We have a customer support team of very talented people. And we already had strong accounting. And then the platform itself is white label. It's sort of a direct to fan platform. So you can see the events on Zyko's homepage, but most of our clients build their own event sort of listing site and sell tickets themselves directly to fans. And so that means that, instead of doing a lot of data entry, which a ticket company like Ticketmaster will still do, put in all the info, our clients create the events and make the tickets themselves, almost like maybe Eventbrite. So they log in, they put in the details, they put in the date, they set the price. Is it a ticket to a real world event, or is it a ticket to a streaming event? Is it a secret ticket? Can anyone get it? Is it for fan club only? Is it VIP? And our clients will plan events and then just put tickets on sale in a very sort of flexible, transparent way. So that allowed us to scale very quickly, because if we were a more traditional company where it's like, okay, send us the info on email and we'll do all the data entry, we wouldn't have anything near the scale we have. But instead, we're a platform builder where all these event organizers can come and they love it because they're in full control. But then also, because we're providing the platform, but we're not an aggregation site and we're not marketing per se, because we're white label, that means that the data of the users and so on, like we, personal data aside, we give that data back to organizers so they can see like who's buying the ticket, what should I do next time? It really empowers them to kind of build their business using our tools. And that's the role we play. And that's why we grew so quickly, because we were kind of like had all the pieces in place, and then we empower the event organizers to use us to build their business, and so they come back again and again. So does that answer your question?
100%. I think Zico is basically epitomized what a lot of startups, the top startups, the successful ones who actually think outside the box, and they're able to pivot hard, and actually pivot hard choices into a successful business model, like what you just mentioned about giving businesses or even artists or event builders, right, the ability to white label your platform. So in your eyes and from your observation, right, what other startups or cutting edge companies have you seen in Japan who also, like Zico, has thought outside of the box and they can actually pivot hard choices into successful business models?
Yeah. So, the Japanese startup scene is interesting. There's not as much, like the amount of funding that you get access to in America, for example, is just crazy. In Japan, it's kind of maybe a bit smaller. And then also there's a lot of startups in Japan. This is going to sound negative, but it's just kind of reality. There's a lot of startups in Japan that will copy some successful startup in somewhere else. So they'll make, like what's the crowdfunding site? They'll make a crowdfunding site, Kickstarter. They'll make a Japanese version of Kickstarter, or they'll make a Japanese version of Uber Eats. It's a lot of localization rather than real innovation, because the way that businesses work here is so different that if you can make a startup that can copy a disruptive business model quicker than that company can localize their business, then you can win. So unfortunately, there's a lot of that, which I think is kind of too bad. And so for me, especially with entertainment industry background, some of the things that I'm most excited about that I think are actual, real, interesting innovations. Do you know VTubers?
YouTubers?
VTubers. So it's like virtual YouTubers. So it's like
I'm learning today. VTubers.
So it's anime characters with voice actors and motion capture.
So they are reenacting scenes from a drama or from a stage show, for example?
It's just YouTubers. It's just being a YouTuber. So doing comedy, playing games, making like funny little sketches. But instead of a person, it's an anime character that they film with motion capture and voices. So it's like an avatar YouTuber, and it's so interesting. And some of them have music, and you can see if you search VTuber, you can find 1 million on YouTube, and it's getting popular kind of around the world in a very specific subculture. But I think that's really, really interesting. And I think like the VTubers, the voices are so interesting, and you're making like real life entertainment content as an avatar, and it's very digital, and you can do all these things that real people can't do. So I'm kind of embarrassed to say that, but that's actually what I think is the most interesting thing in Japan right now. And it's also like so uniquely Japanese, like nobody else has it. So yeah.
That is really interesting to me too. This is so Japan, it's so Japan oriented. It's like they come out with things like that. Some may call it silly. I call it cute. I call it kawaii, because it's like only Japan can pull it off. And of course, there are many ways to also like bring different shows or different platforms to life, right? And just through all this creativity that allows them to really shine and cut through the noise.
And what I think too is like, you look at video games and like how video games and mobile gaming has turned into like such a monster in terms of like revenue and innovation. And you can become you're a different avatar in the video game, right? And you can buy a skin, you can buy a special gun, like you're buying digital merchandise in digital worlds with an avatar, right? And it's so successful, it's generating so much revenue. But then if you look at the music industry or like some parts of the entertainment industry, it's like they've watched that and they've learned nothing. Like it's so like the event industry is so analog. Like you get a ticket, you go to a physical place, you go home, and they never contact you again. You can't watch a concert in a virtual environment. You can't become a different person. You can't become the artist. You could do things like this, and I mean that will happen someday. But I feel like I feel like that's some of the most interesting things, and it's happening in gaming, but in like film or TV or like YouTube comedy or music, like it's actually still very analog, or I don't know what you want to call it, which is maybe fine. But I do think like when you look at what gaming is doing versus what entertainment world is doing, there's a lot of like new types of entertainment and experiences that people will start to get. And that's honestly, at Zyco, we kind of want to dip our toes into that a little bit. You know, now we're selling videos, but what we're really doing is becoming a pioneer in the space of digital events. And so like, what will digital events look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And it'll probably be a lot closer to gaming and like anime avatars than it will like filming a concert at a venue at an empty hall, you know? And so yeah, that's some of the stuff that I tend to think about, and makes me also very excited.
And I'm excited, hearing that as well, especially these sort of developments, right, in the tech world, intersecting with the entertainment, of course, and live music and events. So I do remember that my kids have recently told me about their experience on Fortnite. I think one rapper or a hip hop artist actually premiered a new single within the game, Fortnite. So that's another area where it's really taking what gorillas, this band, fictitious band, right, with all these avatar characters, right, and the cartoon characters, they actually brought it to life when we actually bought those CDs. I think that was in the mid 90s or the late 90s when gorillas was a huge thing, because it was something interesting, and the band actually got a huge following as a result of their creativity. And of course, now we have rappers who are releasing single or doing live performance digitally in even games. So those rooms are really exciting, and it's great to hear that Zyco is also in the same space and also building new technology and innovating to cut through the noise.
Yeah. I mean, that's where we want to be.
Fantastic. I want to find out, in terms of the events and festivals that are in the pipeline, what are some of those that you think the Asian-based audiences who are watching this or listening to this replay on their airports or smart speakers later on, which are the events they should check out on your Zyco platform?
Oh, that's a great question. So there's one that's really interesting coming up on Valentine's Day, if you're free. So February 14th. But it'll be a little bit after, because there's kind of an archive period for the video. But the famous Japanese writer Murakami Haruki?
Yeah,
he writes all the novels. So we have a Murakami Haruki event. And he's famous for, he puts a lot of like bossa nova and jazz into his novels, right? It's like whiskey, jazz, some guy. So he has a radio show here, and they're doing, once a year they do an event for his sort of radio show where they listen to jazz and bossa nova, and they talk about sort of culture and bring various artists. And he hosts the show. And this year they're offering it online streaming. And we're putting English subtitles on it and putting it out worldwide. And so you can find that on our website. It's Murakami Jam, and it'll pop up if you go to zyco.io. But it's a chance, Murakami Haruki doesn't take very many interviews. Like, he's not a very public facing, he's a very private person. So it's really rare that you have the chance to see him on stage talking about what he loves. So I think that would be really interesting if anyone's looking for something to do the week after Valentine's Day.
That is so super cool, and it's something that I'm looking forward to as well. I think it will be a new experience, especially purchasing a ticket, right? And of course, getting all these other things that you don't really get from an analog experience usually for in-person event. So this will be a new way to actually consume content and to actually experience it for ourselves. So I also urge our audiences and listeners to go check out this particular event. And maybe tell us how we can reach out to you, and where can we actually find out more about Zyco? What's the go-to website?
Sure. So a couple ways. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, super reachable. And then honestly, the best way to contact us is through our contact form on our website. We have sales staff who speak 5-6 languages. So no matter what language you write us in, we will get back to you. So you can contact us to get more information about what we do, or plan something together. And then if you want to find me, you can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn very, very easily. So
before we let you go, name me 3 of your favorite artists or musicians.
Really? Oh no.
Right?
Well, yeah. Put me on the spot here, Wayne. Can I just do 2?
Yeah. 2
okay.
is. Yeah.
Well, we'll do 3. So D'Angelo. Oh, thanks, Nita. So I think the link that Nita just put in this chat is the Murakami Jam, probably. D'Angelo. Yeah. Oh, what's this way? Yeah. D'Angelo, Erykah Badu. Okay.
What's the second artist that you love?
Erykah Badu.
Erykah Badu. Great choices. These are actually my bucket list bands. And if they are going to be performing live on a live stream through the Zico platform, I'll be the first to actually buy tickets and actually see them appear on my screens. This is what we do, right? During pandemic times, we are locked up at home. So it's the best time to actually consume concerts and all these virtual events and festivals. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this together with me in this podcast festival. So I really appreciate you for agreeing to do this. And of course, tell us about your story and also the wonderful things, the Zico platform is doing. So I urge our listeners and those who are watching, go check out this link, because this is not just the only event. There are tons of great events to check out on your platform, right? So any last message for us before you go?
Not really, but I just want to say thank you so much for including us. We've been very heads down, Japan focused, but there's a lot of people all over the world who could use our platform, who we want to partner with, and a lot of events that anyone could enjoy. So just thank you very much for the opportunity for me to explain what we do and where we're going.
Thank you, Lauren. Please take care over there and take care of each other. And I look forward to see you back on this festival soon. Hopefully next time you have more cool events to share with us. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Wayne.
Bye, Lauren. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya. And 2 guests down. We have a 3rd guest who's coming on later on in this breakfast session of Podcast Festival, PodFest Asia. So just to let for those who are joining in right now, right, we have a few sponsors that we would love to thank. And we actually, thank and appreciate every single one of the sponsor member out there who's part of the PodFest Asia community. And they've also generously, contributed to make this festival happen. And of course, for our future in-person workshops and events as well. And hopefully we can bring those in-person events back in Singapore once again. We have only started doing this festival, I think 2 months ago. This is only the 2nd edition, and we are looking forward to a 3rd edition in February, where we're going to have even more speakers, more fantastic speakers like Lauren, who just came on, and she's based in Japan. And of course, it's great for her to tell the situation there and her story as well, and what the fantastic innovation that Zico is doing for the events community. And for those who are planning festivals, even someone like me, right? If I want to turn this into a ticketed event, now there is always a platform to go to, because like what she mentioned earlier, the more tickets that we sell, the more we can make the product or even the content even more exciting and bring in even more top-notch speakers onto the festival and to share their wisdom, their experience and knowledge with podcasters around the world. And not just people in the podcasting realm, but all content creators. You could be a YouTuber, you could be someone who actually live stream on Twitch, or you could be someone who is just a beginner or amateur who is just starting to do your own passion project. And I think content like this, where we know more about the resources, we know more knowledge about how to get certain things done, like how to actually sell tickets if you are going to create or curate your own festival. These are all great information that we should actually share freely. Like right now, this is still a free to attend event. PodFest Asia, we strive to ensure that all our current content and our festival and our speakers, gracing our events. These are all, free to attend. It's not behind a paywall. And of course, there are many sponsor members that we have to thank for making this possible. Zayco being one of them. And we have many other sponsor members we want to give shout outs to who are elevating this industry, who are also believing in a collaborative space so that we can actually make the podcasting industry, not just in Asia, but beyond, actually, improve and actually go to the next level. I think what we are trying to achieve here is to ensure that through all this shared information, knowledge, know-how, experience, even technology that make these things happen, we actually create a very educated, industry, a very educated community as well. So everybody has a chance to actually raise the tide together, and we can all lift the boats together. So I think there are 3 more sponsors that I have give shout outs to, and Zayco being one of them. Nielsen is also one of the sponsor member I want to give a shout out to. So shout out to Chung Man, who is from Nielsen, for actually becoming a sponsor member. And of course, to LAMC Productions as well. Shout out to Loretta Alabons. And Audrey.io, Nicholas Hildebrand from Audrey will actually come on to our festival tomorrow to actually tell us about what Audrey platform is able to create and also provide for podcasters out there. And more sponsors or members that we want to give shout out to Booked as well. They are the space innovators. We call them the office space innovators. And shout out to David Wong, who became a sponsor member recently for PodFest Asia. So we actually appreciate each and every single one of them out there who are trying to their best as well to make sure that they can help in terms of raising the tide and lift all boats, and also make sure this podcasting industry become a really thriving one and moving forward, and not just in 2021 but beyond as well. So while we await for our next guest to appear backstage, I'm going to just replay a recent, in fact, it's a 1 month old rebroadcast of a session that I did with the CEO, or should I say the Chief Programming Officer of South by Southwest. So I'm going to replay this episode because it's one of those most requested for replays, not just on a podcast, based on the analytics that we see on a podcast show, which is the PodFest Asia podcast. We see that many people love to hear the insights and the wisdom shared by Chief Programming Officer of South by Southwest. So we thought that it's a good idea, in between guests appearing on the festival, to actually show replays as well. So I'm going to share my screen right here. And so everyone can actually listening in. While I'm doing that, perhaps you can also see, different angles and how it looks like out there in Singapore right now. It's basically sunny Singapore. And I'm actually really grateful for the fact that I actually can do a early morning session right till the morning and see the sunrise together. So together with my guests, it's actually a wonderful thing to be able to do this and continuously, invite guests one after another and tell us, what they do and put a spotlight on them. So I'm going to just create a new share screen so you could see the replay. And what you're about to watch is basically what went down during day 1 of our inaugural PodFest Asia virtual event, presenting to you, Hugh Forrest. So hopefully you can see this screen, and I'm going to play you this particular rebroadcast. So please enjoy. 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, Hugh Forrest, South by Southwest Chief Programming Officer, is on the program. How are you today, Hugh?
I'm good, Wayne. Thanks for having me on. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I just, woke up from a nap. So been streaming live since 6 a.m. in Singapore time, this morning. So I think I had like 1 dozen guests so far. And it's been an incredible day. And I think it topped it off by having you coming on to the program. So I'm so thrilled.
Thank you for the nice words. I'm sure you've had much better guests than me, but I appreciate your compliments.
Well, South by Southwest, to me, personally, it's probably one of the reasons why we're doing this PodFest Asia in the first place. I was one of your visitors, one of the attendees a year ago. So I went to Austin and I fell in love, with everything that I saw and experienced. I think the music culture, the live music, all the bands. I think there were like 4,000 bands, maybe 2,000 bands. I was exaggerating. Sorry for that. And the kind of, the colors that I saw and the kind of things that I hear, it was until today, I'm still like, it's like a pinch me moment, giving me a chance to live that again. I think I don't know what I would give, just to experience that all over again. But of course, this pandemic means that this year I wasn't able to catch Trent Reznor. I wasn't able to catch Kim Kardashian. I wasn't able to meet Michael Moore, the film director who I admire since I was a teenager this year. But I'm just glad that we still have this digital format. And how has this pandemic actually impacted on South by Southwest in terms of the experience for you personally?
Well, again, Wayne, thanks for the nice words. Glad you were able to visit Austin in 2019, I guess, and that South by Southwest made a big impact on you. We celebrate all things creative from many, many different industries, and one of the things we're most proud of is all the international guests and attendees we have in recent years, and you're certainly evidence of that. I'm glad that also gives us lots of opportunities, which should spur the next decade of growth and development and evolution at South
edition, which was last year in 2019, right? There were like 2,000 bands and creative people from all different walks of life from around the world coming together annually, right? So this music thing or this theme is going to continue and be the driving force of South by Southwest?
Well, I would say that they're more, in a sense, more tech people coming to South by Southwest now than there are music people. That said, music is the backbone to everything we do. It's where we started. It still provides that energy, enthusiasm, passion that makes South by Southwest so special. As you saw when you were here, yeah, we've got 2,000 bands from all over the U.S., all over the world, all different kinds of music, everything from country western to rap and hip hop to jazz to everything in between. And being able to experience all those different kinds of music at one place at one time is one of the things that makes South by Southwest so special. I'll also say that, when we were evolving into more of a tech event, I think that music aspect is one of the things that really helped us, that the tech crowd, the startup crowd wanted to be on the same stage as these rock stars were. They wanted to get that kind of treatment. And in a sense, that is what has happened in the last 15 years, is that, nerds and geeks have gone from being outcasts to being the rock stars in our society. So again, South by Southwest kind of paralleled that general development that we've seen.
I remember vividly walking into Barracuda, I think, club along 6th Street. And, as a fan of industrial music who grew up with Nine Inch Nails music, right? I hear, drum machines and synthesizers and from afar, and I immediately went to the right venue to catch, I think, an industrial band from Canada called Onis perform right in front of me. And we was just so thrilled, to be able to just walk to any venue and there's different genre of bands playing, doing their showcases. So it's something that I want to relive all over again. And of course, you have this digital format that is available now, so making it so accessible to anyone around the world to just buy a ticket that is at a fraction of the price, right? And you can relive those memories. So I'm actually one of those who has, already gotten one of your passes for your upcoming one.
Nice.
So really looking forward to that again. Yeah.
Good. I'm impressed at how much you remember from your trip to Austin in 2019. And yes, you describe it well. For those who haven't been to Austin, we have a street called 6th Street where a lot of the live music venues are. And what's so neat about that during South by Southwest is, you can go to Barracuda and see an industrial band from Canada. Then you can walk to the club right next door and see a string quartet from South America or something. And it's like, it's like the internet come to life, where you can switch from one thing to another very quickly, very easily. So many different things going on, so many very creative people to meet, so many ways to be inspired. That's what South by Southwest is all about.
So I'm definitely going to ask you this question because just doing this inaugural PodFest Asia event, right now our community is only like 100 plus podcasters in our community in Asia, but it's growing. So we want to learn from you guys, the expert, on how to grow a community and how to run really successful and impressive conferences. So maybe can you tell us, in terms of like this conference, right? What does it take to put on a big show like that? And we know the panels and presentations, trade show drew like 70,000 people. That's a really large scale event, with startups and music fans all descending the city at the same time. So what does it take to put up a big show like that?
Well, if you want to achieve scale, and that's the decision you got to make, because quantity is not always the goal. But if you want quantity, certainly the thing to learn from South by Southwest is just persistence, and small growth every year has added up to huge growth overall. Certainly, if you were in Austin in 1987 or 1988 or 1989, when the first South by Southwest happened, it was much different. It was much, much smaller. But every year we've tried to grow a little. We've tried to improve on things we didn't do so well. We've tried to reach out to the community more, try to incorporate some of their suggestions. And again, every year I feel like we've gotten a little better at what we do, and over time that is amassed to a something of pretty gigantic international scale. So again, my tip there, and it's not too sexy, but I think it's real, is just keep plugging away, keep doing what you're doing. Every long journey starts with a few small steps, and if you've got that patience and persistence and drive and passion, and from everything I've seen and talking to you this morning, you do, then you can achieve something truly phenomenal here.
That's amazing. So slow and steady, bit fast and furious, right? In your own words. And when did you actually decided to add the interactive element track to the conference, which I believe in the beginning, right, you guys didn't really see any growth for 5 years, and then suddenly exploded, right? Sometime around, maybe 1994. So before music content actually went digital.
Well, we added this multimedia event in 1994. In many ways, it was seeing what was happening in the world. It was also seeing what was happening in Austin with a small computer company called Dell, which was beginning to gain some traction. I will say that when we first started in 1994, it was essentially or generally pre-internet. So the kind of biggest technology at that point was CD-ROMs, and as you say, it was kind of difficult to find our footing initially. It took us a while. We began to see some growth around 2000 with the initial .com boom. And then what really helped us was being in the right place, the right time, with a lot of the early innovators and pioneers of social media. So Twitter famously launched or got its big push at South by Southwest in 2007. Even before that, we had a keynote from a gentleman named Jonathan Abrams, who is the founder and CEO of a social media company called Friendster, if anyone remembers that. And, in the early 2000s, while social media is like water or air to us now, we fully understand or generally understand how it works, its advantages and disadvantages. In the early 2000s, explaining social media and having someone like Jonathan Abrams talk about what they were doing at Friendster was a whole new concept. And again, he was a speaker there. We had people like Ev Williams, who went on to form Twitter, Biz Stone. We had Mark Zuckerberg as a keynote in 2008 or 2009. Again, a lot of these early pioneers of social media were at South by Southwest, and that really pushed our growth. And it was neat to see.
And talking about influential founders of tech companies, I was researching for this particular program, and I was watching YouTube clips of you introducing Tony Hsieh from Zappos. So maybe this is the right time to pay tribute to the great man who unfortunately passed away due to injuries sustained in a fire. So I understand that whenever he comes to South by Southwest, you personally introduce him to the stage, and he's always well received. And one of the biggest highlights for South by Southwest was when actually he made a keynote appearance, and he dropped a lot of value bombs in his speeches. So tell us your memory of Tony Hsieh, and did you have a great relationship with Tony as well when he was still alive?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Tony Hsieh. It's certainly been a very sad week with the information of his passing. He was a big part of the South by Southwest community. He spoke on or he delivered opening remarks in 2008, and that was before that famous book of his, Delivering Happiness, came out. And he was a great choice to give the opening remarks, because his message of customer service, of doing everything for your customers, really resonated with our community. He had spoken on a panel even the year before called Customer Service is the New Marketing. And I think that very much, summarizes their approach. And he would come to South by Southwest very often. They had a Zappos bus that would be at South by Southwest, which was a lot of fun. I think the other aspect to mention is that We did for 3 years an event in Las Vegas called South by Southwest V2V that was very focused on startups. And one of the big reasons that we did this V2V event was what Tony Hsieh was doing there with the downtown project, which was this idea of revitalizing the old town portion of Las Vegas, making it a startup hub, bringing in more, fun businesses, cool businesses that would encourage more creatives to move to Las Vegas. And Tony, in fact, delivered the first keynote speech at South by Southwest V2V, which was titled "The City as a Startup." So again, I was always very, very inspired by Tony. Very inspired with the culture he helped to implement at Zappos, and that idea of customer service. And again, very sad at his passing. But I think his legacy lives on with a lot of people, and happy to be able to talk a few words about him on the podcast today.
I think he touched so many people in terms of his egalitarian ways and also how he actually treated his customers, right? He doesn't really believe in investment in a lot of paid advertising. He would rather invest it in making his customer happy. So I remember when I was in Las Vegas attending another conference called PopCon, I visited his HQ, and I wasn't able to meet him. I actually wanted to interview him for my podcast, but unfortunately he wasn't in the HQ office at the time. But he did, instruct his CMO to pass me a book, which he actually autographed, and he wrote a message there, which is whatever you're thinking, right? Think bigger. So it's really inspirational. And to this day, I'm as shocked as everyone, when we found out news about his sudden passing at such a young age of 46. So this is probably a good moment to leave a glass to pay tribute to him. But I don't have a glass with me, so maybe next time.
Yeah. Well, sad, but again, he leaves a huge legacy, and that legacy of customer service, of being receptive to your community, of building a community, of investing in word of mouth marketing as opposed to other kinds of advertising. I think those kinds of ideas very much have helped build the best parts of the internet, and will continue to build the best parts of the internet and connected culture. And props to Tony for all he did to push that message.
So let's move on and talk about Austin as a city, right? And, so many celebrities have moved there now, not just tech founders, right? Joe Rogan, my favorite podcaster, is now a resident of Austin. And I'm also planning to move to Austin, one of these,
Excellent.
I'm going to leave everything behind in Singapore and just anchor myself in Austin. But the thing about Austin that really struck me, is just the kind of community spirit, the creativity, the music element, and of course, the economic impact that South by Southwest actually brought to the city, right? And the one that I attended last year, I remember I was already spending like $300 on Lyft and Uber rides alone, And thank God my flight and accommodation were covered by my Japanese clients at the time. So what kind of economic, impact you actually brought into the local community when you run your annual events in Austin?
The 2019 event had about a $350 million economic impact. And put that in context, that's about 2/3 of an American Super Bowl. It is the biggest single event to impact the Austin economy, which is great. It's certainly, the not great portion of that is not having a 2020 event, and having a 2021 event that's largely virtual is very impactful to the Austin economy. Beyond that economic impact of just money spent on Ubers, on taxis, on restaurants, on hotel rooms, South by Southwest has generated so much media coverage and helped build this brand Austin, where people in Singapore actually know what, or a lot of people have heard what Austin is and might not have heard of it otherwise. I think that South by Southwest is one of many factors that has helped Austin become one of the fastest growing cities in the U.S. It's one of many factors that, as you referenced, means that Joe Rogan moved here, means that Tesla's opened a new factory here, means that the Box CEO has moved here. It means a lot of tech people are coming here. And as long as they continue to contribute to the creative spirit that we have in Austin, to the community feel that we have in Austin, then their addition here is welcome. And we look forward to having you here soon, too.
And you welcome the likes of Alex Jones as well, right? I understand that he's spotted in the city quite often, driving his car. So, yeah, let's not talk about Alex Jones. Let's move on and talk about the creative community. I think it's one of the reasons why South by Southwest succeeded in Austin. So you have this panel picker, which I really love. It's open sourcing, all the future speakers as well. So with our community, right, now at about 100 plus strength of podcasters, we hope to be able to pitch as well, to speak at South by Southwest in the future. And this panel picker will continue to allow and provide opportunities for people like us to join in the action.
Yeah, we've done this. We've had an interface called the South by Southwest Panel Picker for approximately 13 years at this point. It's a as you say, it ties in with the open source vibe of the web. It is a direct path for our community to input speaking ideas. It shows it directly shows how important the community is to our success. It's a great way to get more international representation into the event. It's a great way it's been one of the ways that we've expanded into various different industries. So it's been one of the things that's helped us. I mean, a little bit back to the previous question, or that ties into this, about why Austin. I mean, Austin always had a very strong music community, very strong art community, and those are things that have directly tied into the success of South by Southwest. I think in many ways, a lot of the creativity in Austin comes from the fact of having a large state university here. And so you have lots of young people here with lots of big ideas on how to change the world. Lots of people who want to be in a band, or want to be in a startup, or want to write a novel, or want to create a movie, or want to do something else that's very, very creative. And it's a great place to live 365 days, 52 weeks a year. It's an even greater place to live during that 10 days of South by Southwest every March.
That's fantastic. So time really flew past, when we are having a great conversation. I think it's an effortless program to do this together with you, because you have so many great stories to share about how you set up, and make such a successful and a community from the global, region, basically just congregate there every year. So, unfortunately, due to lack of time, probably I have to save my 100 more questions for the next edition of PodFest Asia.
Next time.
We're going to have a second edition probably in January, late January, early February. It'll be a virtual event again. Hopefully we can re-invite you back and tell us more, what you're up to. And of course, give us more, sneak previews of what to expect from this digital event for South by Southwest Online, which is basically experience from March 16th to 20th, 2021. So I urge, our PodFest Asia community members to register today to take advantage of the unique opportunities that your event has to offer, including keynotes, conference sessions, music festival showcase, film festival screenings, networking, so on and so forth, right? And online passes, I believe, are now available at only $149 rate, and are almost sold out, right, at this moment?
Correct. So buy soon to get that low rate. Yes, you can find the most information about South by Southwest online at sxsw.com. If we can talk again in January or February, I can give more information on the lineup for 2021, which we're busy putting together and very, very excited about. But again, look forward to having even more international participation in 2021 and 2022. Really excited about how much we've grown in Asia over the last decade, and really excited that you can help spread the word to your many contacts in the region.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Hugh, for agreeing to do this with me. And I'm really thankful and I'm grateful that you agreed to come on this program and gracing our event. So keep yourself safe and take care of each other over there in Austin, Texas. Yeah.
Thanks much, Wayne. Yourself as well. We'll see you soon. Okay.
See you very soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
And we're back. Hopefully you can hear me loud and clear. We are back on live again. So you'll probably be able to see my camera from another angle. I'm actually looking out at the skies right now. It's a little bit cloudy, a little gloomy, not as bright and sunny as I expected right here in Singapore. So I'm going to bring on my next guest. And my next guest is someone I'm really, really happy to meet recently in a new social audio app called Clubhouse. And it's from Clubhouse that I'm able to engage with more people and especially podcasters around the world. And Helen Li is one of those podcasters that I really think that the world should watch out because she's an amazing Asian American podcaster. She's the founder of Fresh Off the Vote podcast, and she's coming for you and coming on PodFest Asia. So without further ado, invite Helen Li to the program. How are you, my friend? Can you hear me? Let me try to unmute you. I think, I accidentally muted you.
I'm so sorry. Good morning.
What time is it over there? Where exactly are you right now?
So right now I'm in Nepal. It's 7:54 a.m. So it's, but I usually wake up around like 6, usually. Yeah.
Super early for you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is super early, but everyone wakes up early here. So.
Okay, I've been up actually since last night, 2 a.m. I haven't actually had a good night rest yet, although I had managed to squeeze in 30 minutes of napping time, in between guests. And in between playing, replays as well. It's like one way for me to get some rest. So are you well rested? Ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Sure, hit me up with the questions.
Well, I have a ton of questions prepared for you. I just hope that we have enough time. So just to start things off, right, maybe let our audience in this part of the world understand more about your podcast, because we know that Fresh Off the Vote provides relevant and also understandable content. That it's you don't necessarily need to be an Asian American or living in America, right, to actually identify or actually learn about the stuff that you talk about on your episodes, especially on U.S. politics and religion. And even as a 100% Singaporean, I learned a lot from listening to your episodes on U.S. politics and religion and Kamala Harris as well. So you've done a phenomenal job with your podcast. So how did you feel about actually winning the Gold Award for Best News Culture Podcast recently?
So one of the members of the Asian American podcast community, Jerry Wan, shout out to him. He created the Asian Podcast Network Awards, just Asian American, Asian diaspora related podcasts, English-based podcasts, and some categories. And you could nominate yourself, and then we nominated ourselves for the best news and culture category. And ultimately, the podcast community votes on you. And so it's really nice to be voted best news and culture. We definitely have a lot to continuously improve on, but what I guess was really awesome was the fact that, we are an all remote team and we have never met each other before in person. And so to produce something that people want to listen to, people admire our work, I think that's just so cool, considering most of us didn't know what we were doing when we were starting at all. And so I think that awards is not as important as simply knowing the process of it, what it takes to, get to that place. And so the journey has been really, really, really inspiring.
This is fantastic. I need to ask you why Asian Americans do not want to be tokenized in politics and culture, and they want to be nuanced and understood, right? So that people could advocate for them. Maybe could you tell us more in terms of this perspective as an Asian American? Like I'm Singaporean, I don't live in America, but I do feel that when I come on to Clubhouse, especially, and I hear conversations with Asian Americans, there is definitely a feeling that that they do not want to be tokenized. So can you maybe tell us, maybe expand a bit on this?
Yeah, sure. So I started the podcast last year around June, July-ish. We assembled our team, and it was really thinking about the United States presidential elections and down ballot elections in November. And so this idea of not wanting to be tokenized is simply that Asian Americans, and when we say Asian Americans, technically, we also sometimes on the census include Pacific Islanders, which is a little bit weird considering that their struggles are very different. And so when I say Pacific Islanders, I mean like we have a lot of American territories in the Pacific, Native Hawaiians also. And then Asian American is such a weird, broad term. It was a term coined out of this, well, what they call the Third World Movement for ethnic studies in the United States a few decades ago. And Asian American is a political term. It's used to build a coalition, a group of people that honestly maybe only have a little bit of similarity, but in mainstream politics, that really translates into certain experiences, and one of them is simply being misunderstood. So a lot of politicians don't cater to Asian Americans simply because they're only 6% of the 6 or 7% of the electorate. Like that is a minuscule part, and they also are distributed across the United States in a very uneven manner. And so the way US politics works, you do try to campaign for the votes and the numbers. And so oftentimes, people will think, well, Asian America, and that just means people who have origin from the continent of Asia, that they all think the same politics-wise. They're all maybe Chinese, or even there's this weird tension between people when you say Asian American, or Indian Americans within that realm, simply because this idea of Asian America is really abstract. But that just translates into politicians not thinking about the needs of Asian Americans and serving them during what are really tough times for everyone. And so that was just me personally. I thought that was an important story to tell. And so we produced a season 1 of episodes that focused on different election issues and the viewpoints of young Asian Americans like my team, but also experts in the field. And ultimately, like you said, you don't have to be Asian American to listen to them. I especially think some of our episodes are relevant to everyone. We had an episode on misinformation, and that's entirely, its own ecosystem too. So I think that it's been such a pleasure to just, you want to do something for your podcast that enriches your own self and your own understanding of yourself. And I think that doing this podcast has really enriched that.
This is great. And I think you mentioned about your season 1 of Fresh Off the Vote. So why do you want to reimagine on this Fresh Off the Vote podcast what it means to be an active citizen in US society, and actually hope that your stories and the people's stories that you feature on and you report on can actually bring listeners perspectives that they may not have heard during a very pivotal 2020?
Yeah, so I think first of all, there's 2 layers, right? There's the content you produce and the listeners that follow it, and then there's the team itself. So our team was a group of, we call ourselves Zillennials, the intersection between Gen Z and Millennial, that generation. And we were all working from different sectors. So we didn't know each other. None of us had really podcast nor journalism experience at the time. And we decided to come together, and the purpose was you don't have to be very much knowledgeable about politics to get involved. And that's the philosophy that really guided in, reimagining the active citizen. What does it mean to hold each other accountable? We produce content that's well-researched, and we want to inform people who listen to us about the issues, but also ourselves. Throughout doing that research, we inform our own political identity. And so I think that there's a 2-layer transformation that can occur. And that just shows you don't need to go run for office to get involved in politics. You don't need to, there are so many ideas of what it means to be political or being an active citizen, and we just wanted to spread the word.
That brings to my next question. Why do you think that your show is 100% grassroots podcast for educating Asian American youth?
Why or what?
Why? Why do you think that your show is 100% grassroots podcast?
Interesting. So I think the idea of grassroots oftentimes can have both a positive and negative connotation. So positive in the sense that it comes from the people. It's not something that, too often in politics, and especially in American election politics, it's people judging you and doing things based on what they imagine to be true. So like campaigners and politicians will try to cater to Asian Americans based upon what they think Asian Americans want. But the reality, like I said earlier, is a very nuanced, like low income, high income, whether you came over as a refugee, H-1B immigrant, if you came 5 generations ago and you're a descendant, if you're from the territories, etc. It's just so incredibly different, right? And so grassroots comes from the fact that like, we're not like some white guy trying to tell you what Asian Americans think. We are people who live the experience and know that the experience is diverse and want to try to highlight that. So that's why it's grassroots on one hand. On the other hand, I think that there is often this negative connotation of using the words grassroots, like, oh, you're not formal, you're not professional, you're not, there's this idea there that something that comes from almost a project style birth story isn't worth carrying on and worth investing or worth looking at. And when I say investing, I mean, like, people think of money, but also there's time, there's listening, there's sharing the stories. And so I think that maybe I'm not like from a big studio, but it doesn't mean that the stories or even just the journey we've been on isn't valuable to learn from, or to spread the word, to listen to the episodes, to donate, to contribute to young creators like us, simply because there are a lot of stories that need to be told and perspectives that haven't been shared yet.
I totally agree with you in terms of like having a grassroots podcast, right? Doesn't mean that it isn't 100% polished or 100% professional. On the contrary, sometimes the content value is even trying over some of these really polished shows out there that has lower content value. I actually find your show has really high content value, and in terms of production value or what lots of podcasters might feel, that they have this imposter syndrome about their shows as well. Eventually, everyone will get there. If you just keep grinding and just improving, right, making little small refinements, the production value can actually be easily achieved through grinding and continuously improving on your show, right? But it's a content value that people take notice the first time when they listen to great shows like yours. So I want to ask you what went down during your recent Clubhouse room discussion, because Clubhouse is the app where we actually found each other, And it's interesting for me because I know that you have moderated many fascinating discussions there. And of course, during your recent discussion, your topic was who would likely be the first Asian American president. So what actually went down during that discussion?
Yeah, so I joined Clubhouse after someone nominated me. It's an invite-only app, sadly, right now for iOS users. And I think that, it's really interesting joining a social media app like Clubhouse, where you can kind of start your new identity, figure out what your interests are, follow people, join clubs, and talk and join discussions. And so for me, I found that some of the rooms I was gravitating towards, or not maybe gravitating, because I actually gravitate towards like a variety of rooms, like random topics about international relations especially. But the rooms where I think I could contribute the most is providing that insight into not representing all of Asian America at all, because again, we're very nuanced, but to say, hey, here's a perspective you haven't considered yet, and maybe think about it. And so yesterday I moderated a room with a young author who wrote a book called Not Your Yellow Fantasy. Her name is Kipum Park, and she wrote this book about Asian American women and fetishization and the experience of yellow fever. Maybe these are weird terms for your audience to know, but it's this trend where like Asian women are seen as more sexualized, and that really shifts how the dating scene works. And then Asian men are not seen as masculine at the same time. And that also changes their dating scene too, and just overall like hierarchies in our society. And she wrote a book about it. And then I got in contact with her and another co-moderator, and we moderated this really awesome discussion where we had men and women sharing their perspectives on this topic that, it makes me realize how much like this kind of dialogue is needed. And it's really important to have good moderators who are constantly striving to improve, of course, to moderate these discussions, because there is a need in our society to have them. So I've really thought about Clubhouse as a space to foster dialogue and discussions, also hang out, but like those dialogues may not happen in real life simply because you don't have a chance to meet people like that. So that's where Clubhouse has been for me. I also love joining like random rooms that like talk about like Ugandan elections, misinformation, Twitter hacking, weird like, society influences, or like there was one on like the farmer protests in India. Like there are random stuff that I would never be able to chat about, but I joined them simply because like I'm a continuous learner. So
Why do you think that it's not very likely that an East Asian American, specifically Chinese American, would become president anytime soon?
I feel like that statement you just said needs to be contextualized. So on Clubhouse the other day, we had a discussion about like after the inauguration of U.S. President Joe Biden, we had a discussion about the first Asian American president and who it might be. And so Kamala Harris is probably going to be like the first one, considering her role now. But we were looking at down ballot other Asian Americans running for office and in really pivotal positions in the community. And I think that often being Asian American, you think about turning up being Asian and down being Asian. What I mean by that is in the US, there's this idea of like you being forever foreign. You are not from this country, which nobody is, once again, except for the Native Americans. But turning up and down your Asianness simply because you might not be perceived as someone people can relate to or count on as a leader, sadly. And so I just, in our discussion, I think we were just talking about how like the United States itself has a lot of international relations challenges with many countries. And so perhaps it'll be a little bit of time before you can have someone who maybe looks like me become president. But I'm not saying I'm ruling that out, because I think that by having this discussion more, by criticizing those who are, putting themselves out there also, because we want people to be better, right? It's actually going to spark more conversation, inspire more people to run and get involved in politics. So I'm not saying that it's not possible ever. I'm just saying that we need to confront the challenges that someone like me might face running for office versus, someone who might present phenotypically white. And then, think about strategies, think about how to connect to voters, think about how do we relate to people heart to heart. So yeah, I wanted to contextualize what you just said.
And thank you for that. I first, heard about the policies of Andrew Yang on a podcast, actually, on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast, when Joe Rogan interrogated Andrew Yang for, I think, 4.5 hours. So what are your thoughts on the policies of Andrew Yang and also the way that he presented himself to the Asian American community and what he represents?
Yeah, so Andrew Yang is someone who's most well known for championing UBI, Universal Basic Income. which believes that humans all have like a basic income that they should start out with, and that in turn helps them get on their feet. And I think that he running in the Democratic primaries was interesting to look at simply because he's not a politician. He was an entrepreneur. He's most well known for founding Venture for America, which is a fellowship that prepares, that gets recent graduates with struggling United States cities and pairing them with startups and like how to, invest talent back and into America. And the thing about Andrew is that he is one of the first people to phenotypically, and that's like a genetics term, but that's just how you present physically, to look East Asian and run for president. And so obviously he's a pioneer in many aspects. The challenge of being a pioneer is obviously being lonely, but also having the mistake of being tokenized and people thinking you represent the community. And so he is someone who I admire, but at times he would play into stereotypes, like saying, like I'm an Asian, I'm good at math, or, and I think one of the most angering parts of this is that why do Asian Americans have to feel like one person has to be perfect to run for office, to represent people? Because truly you wouldn't expect that for a white person. And he published this Washington Post opinion article during the first few months of COVID-19, talking about how at this point in time, Asian Americans need to be even more vigilant in, oh gosh, I want to look up the exact quote. Sorry.
Take your time, no worries.
He said, oh my goodness. So he published an article calling "We Asian Americans are not the virus, but we can be part of the cure." Okay, that's fine. But then he said something along the lines of, oh my goodness, where is it? I'm so sorry. Okay, he said, "We Asian Americans need to embrace and show our Americanness in ways we've never had before. We need to step up, help our neighbors, donate gear, vote, wear red, white, and blue, volunteer, fund aid organizations, and do everything in our power to accelerate the end of this crisis. We should show without a shadow of doubt that we are Americans who will do our part for our country in this time of need." That one quote did a lot of damage to how people perceived him, simply because he was basically saying, during a time of crisis where there's a rising xenophobia and hate crimes against people who look like us, we need to be more patriotic. I mean, we're all patriots, right? But it doesn't, it felt like we needed to prove we were American. And that just contributes to this idea that Asian Americans are not American, they don't belong here, they don't contribute to America. And that's harmful when someone like a public figure like him says stuff like that. And it's really, a lot of people after reading that article and seeing how he's probably still navigating what it means to look like, an Asian American around in politics, because he's also running for New York City mayor right now. But this idea of, if you're Asian, you need to prove twice as hard that you're American when you are American. And that's terrible for just representation in general. So I had a lot of feelings about it. I encourage everyone to look at his policies further. That's the better way to look at a candidate than to hear someone like me. But I think I can only speak for myself in sort of the hurt that reading an article like that talked about, how I have to prove to you, why do I have to keep on doing that, right? It's the double expectations of Asian Americans when they're already active citizens in American society.
Fascinating. This leads to the next question about code switching. I think you already mentioned about how Asian American candidates may have to downplay their ethnicity, right? So do you see code switching to appeal to voters as bad?
Mm-hmm. So No, I don't see it as bad. I just see it as a reflection of larger phenomenon. And so I think code switching, everyone does it. You don't have to be ethnic, we call like, you don't have to be a hyphenated American to code switch. I think everyone code switches. It's like if you were to, you're dating someone and your parents don't like them. So you talk to your parents in this way, and then you talk to your partner in this way, and then you go to your office and you talk to your coworkers one way. We all code switch, and code switch is simply like you thinking about like a way to present yourself in the language and how you express yourself, and then changing it for a different context. I say that Asian Americans have to code switch simply because, like I said, there are some people who might look at an Asian American running for office and be like, well, they don't look like me, they can't identify with my struggles, or they're not from here, or all of this stuff, right? And I think that there's this idea that we need to downplay parts of who we are just because we need to appeal to voters. Because again, Asian Americans only 6 or 7% of the population. If you want to win, like nationally, you really can't, like, you need to think about how you're communicating and presenting yourself to other people. And so one of the people I met on Clubhouse, name is Sam Hyun, and I'm not saying that correctly, Hyun, it's Korean. He works in Massachusetts politics. And when I brought up this discussion on Clubhouse about code switching, and do Asian Americans need to downplay their identity simply because you need to appeal to voters, he said, I don't see it as a bad thing simply because you are just trying to emotionally relate and better serve people you're running office to serve for. And that's normal, and we all have to do that. And so I think that that's a more healthier, look at code switching. In terms of podcasting, I know you have that question, how does code switching relate to podcasting? Whenever you're producing anything for an audience, you think about, will your audience like your stuff? And doing a podcast on Asian American politics and the election, and just, that's a very niche topic. And it's also a topic that people often are uncomfortable with because it's not neutral and fun sometimes. And so you think about, do I need to like downplay my content? I'm not calling it dumbing it down because that's disrespectful, but I'm saying, like, do you need to reduce the amount of like using terminology people won't understand, or do you need to interview someone and think about your audience being, someone who doesn't know anything about this? So I think code switching on podcasting is thinking about, also there's like the money aspect. Like the podcasts that make the most money are probably not podcasts that are so specifically focused at this moment right now on things like Asian American politics. But there's a potential future, right? But at this point, that's what it is. And so you think about, like, do I downplay parts of myself while being a host or a podcast producer? Or, who is your target audience? And if you're primarily serving an Asian American audience, then maybe you're going to just proceed as normal. If you want people who may not know anything about Asian America, like even you, Wayne, in Singapore, to understand our politics, we probably need to do a lot more explaining on our episodes, to not assume you know anything, right? To take an educational perspective. And so that's what I mean by code switching, is how you interact with your guests, your team, and how do you present all of that to your audience? Because, a podcast, ultimately, you bring joy to others too. And so you got to think about what's the best way to deliver information that they can consume.
I love your beautiful sharing, and I love how you connected with the podcast as well. Code switching sometimes is also about being nice and to your audience, right? Being nice means to give and to explain, to even prepare, your audience for what's to come. And of course, what you have actually laid down for us and broke it down for us so wonderfully is that these are all aspects of, human to human interaction and the connection. And code switching may be a bad word for some, but it's actually necessary. And in this world that we're living in and how the universe behaves, right? It is necessary. It's also part of, agreeing to disagree and not just tuning out opposing views. And And, people are actually coming together to hear each one out. And I think this is always a wonderful thing. We're going to move on to other topics because I think if we just spend 30 minutes talking about American politics, our audience probably will also, complain. So maybe we'll talk about music, right? Next, I think you've been also posting some music stuff on your newsfeed, I've noticed, and I love it whenever any of my friends post about music. That shows that music is in their blood. I want to ask you, why do you think that current chart toppers, Olivia Rodrigo, Asian American,
I did not expect
for the best new artist at the Grammy next season? Tell us why.
I did not expect you to ask about Olivia Rodrigo, but sure, I'll talk about her.
Yay.
She's half Filipina, and so her dad is of Filipino descent, and so she is technically Asian American, and she's a 17-year-old artist who's taken over the world right now with her debut single, Driver's License, which is about heartbreak and such iconic lyrics. And I always admire artists who take time to, I think music essentially is communicating universal emotions or expressing a story. And she does it so well in her and she's 17. And I also think it's important to admire and not praise. I don't like to use that term. I think it's important to elevate artists who speak up when there's injustice. And I think Olivia Rodrigo, even though she's 17 and she can't vote, during the presidential election, she did a lot of campaigning. And if you think about artists like Taylor Swift, which is her biggest inspiration, and other artists, for a long time in the music industry, people don't get, even though music is political, your lyrics are always political. A lot of artists would not be so political on the front end simply because going back to code switching, you want to appeal to audiences, you want to stay relevant, you want to survive in this really cutthroat industry. But Olivia's been pretty upfront about, like, she's a climate change. She raises awareness about climate change. She talks about injustices, and she's 17, and she can't even vote yet, right? And so that just speaks to how young people nowadays know the platform they have, and they know that through their music, through what they do with their art, it can truly shape a generation to be more aware. And our podcast is to reimagine the active citizen. Artists like her are trying to reimagine what it means to be an active citizen, an active artist. And so she's just getting her career started. So we'll see how it goes. But I really like the song simply because it's very beautiful and emotionally raw. And I think that's the reason why it's the #1 streaming song right now in the world. So, yeah.
I absolutely love that. And, just preparing me when my kids come to me one day and ask me to play Olivia Rodrigo, right? And I actually know, who she is. And, it's like they always bring music to me, like Blackpink. And they are the ones who actually introduced WAP to me as well, So I'm like totally out of touch when it comes to recent chart toppers. And I'm so glad to get to know you and to find out about Olivia Rodrigo through you. And she's definitely someone I will stream on my Spotify next because I love to discover new music. So moving on from the music question, let's move on to the entrepreneurial question. Why elements of Zappos founder, Tony Hsieh, his story really resonates a lot with you. As we all know, right, he recently passed away in very strange, mysterious circumstances. And people like Jewel has came out and talked about how he's surrounding himself with the yesers and, of course, the people who are on his payroll. So what are the elements that actually resonate with you?
Yeah. So obviously I never knew Tony Hsieh personally. I know your last guest knew him personally and introduced him at South by Southwest. So I only kind of know of his founder story, which often is glorified until things happen, and I think he's definitely like a pioneer in what he did. I think what resonates about his story, obviously we're very different people, but I think mental health is not talked about in the Asian American community. And when you're lonely. When you're a pioneer, you're lonely. When you're an entrepreneur, you're going to be lonely. even though you're doing it with a team. And so to see stuff coming out now about what does it mean to be a healthy entrepreneur, right? Because he was such a big proponent of a happy workplace. And, how do you ensure your employees are doing well? I think there's that, but there's also, it's really important to check in with yourself and who you're surrounding yourself with, and remaining genuine to the ideals you are trying to promote. And so, again, I feel like simply because we don't know the cause of his death, but I think it brings up a discussion about mental health and like entrepreneurs and the people who we think are leaders and we idolize. How are they doing mentally, and what exactly is the healthiest environment for sustainable entrepreneurship and leadership? So, yeah, I mean, I'm young and just figuring out my life, so it's always good to reflect on the legacy of other people and their influence.
Before we let you go, we definitely have to ask you one last question about podcasting. What are your biggest learning lesson and takeaways from doing your own podcast?
Yeah. So technically, I am not the audio producer. I am more of like the founder, project manager, outreach side of our podcast. I think the biggest lesson that I have learned, and if those who know what imposter syndrome is you think you're not good enough, so you don't try. I think that, what is that Yoda quote? There is no do or something trying. And it's really important for people to know that my podcast team, we had no idea what we were doing. And sometimes we still don't have any idea what we're doing. I think everything you create, there's a journey, right? Like we started off like, okay, what's our content going to be? Who's our audience going to be? How's our branding going to be? Who do we want to be interviewed? Who do we want to join our team? Those are all questions that throughout the process of starting a podcast, and if you want to do it with other people, you ask yourself. And I 100% had no idea what I was getting into, and I had none of the answers to any of those questions. But my biggest takeaway is to think about this as a journey and think about it as not trying to win something, not trying to, I think it's important to want to strive for being good and being the best, but throughout the process, you're going to learn so much about yourself, and you might be admiring other people from the sidelines. And then the next year you're like, wow, I guess people think I'm also legitimate too, or I'm reputable, even though you know that the process is messy and all it takes kind of is an idea. Like I had an idea, and then I posted it on Facebook, and that's how I assembled my team. I literally have not met them in person. And it's so weird during a pandemic of this surge in creativity, simply because we all have a little bit more of time. And also we think about being intentional. And so I guess my lesson to people is if you have an idea, just kind of go try it out. Stay loyal to being a good person and people over the product. When I say that, I mean like your team members also matter too. You can't do it alone, and prioritize mental health. And ultimately it's a continuous journey that you're gonna keep learning things. You're gonna keep learning things. And if you don't have the answers now, nobody does. Nobody does. Everyone's figuring it out. Nobody has definitive answers. And that's part of the beauty of it, is after you look back, like a year later, you're like, wow, I did all of that. Now I can talk to you, Wayne, about the lessons I've learned, even though I probably a year ago would have been like, oh, I have no idea how to do this. You just jump in and try.
Beautiful sharing. And I always learn tons from you whenever I talk to you on Clubhouse or when I talk to you, right here during this festival. Thanks so much for sharing your learnings. And thank you so much for sharing the story of Fresh Off the Vote podcast. We learned so much. And, one day if you ever decided to run for American president, right, I'll back you 100%. And, you're such a huge honor to say, that candidate that used to be on my festival, my podcast, it will be a proud moment for me. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Yeah.
You really inspire me in more ways than you imagine. Doing this conversation with you actually reinvigorate me, so much. So I really want to invite you back again, for our next festival. We are doing this Monday thing, right? Monday festival. So hopefully you come back and share with us more stories and update us on what's happening over there and what are you're up to, with your podcast as well. So all the best for it.
Yeah. Thank you. I want to do a last plug. Young creators like us, we do appreciate listens and we appreciate donations. So we have a Buy Me a Coffee. For those who are podcasters, if you don't know, podcasting doesn't make money easily, simply because it's catered to the listener. And so there's Patreon. Oh yeah. So it's Buy Me a Coffee / Fresh Off the Vote, VOTE vote. And you can, feel free to buy us a coffee there. And give us a listen, donate to creators like us who are trying to create content for you and kind of diversify the landscape of podcasting and information in general. So someone told me once, never be afraid to self-plug. And so I'm going to self-plug. And so, yeah, any contribution is great.
So I'm going to make sure I spell that correctly, Buy Me a Coffee / Fresh Off the Vote. Did I spell that correctly?
I'm going to send the URL to you right now.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think so a lot of people think about Buy Me a Coffee versus Patreon. Patreon, you kind of have to create like tiers of membership and benefits, but Buy Me a Coffee is nice that it's based on like, you listen to something, you like the content, you want to give to the makers of it, and it's like, $5 is a coffee or something. So here it is. I sent it to you in the chat. So buymeacoffee.com / fresh off the vote. And yeah, any little bit counts. We're an all remote team. So we do have production costs still of software and conferencing and, yeah, so thank you so much, Wayne, for having me on.
Thank you so much, Helen, for agreeing to do this with me. So I really appreciate you. I really like what you're doing, your podcast. And you are so mature beyond your young years, So I really admire you and look up to you, even though I'm older than you. So I would just hope to see you very soon, If not in our festival, I'll definitely be checking you out, doing your moderation and hosting so many interesting rooms and talking about so many diverse topics that great thing for us to learn from. So thank you once again. Please take care of yourself over there and take care of each other in Nepal.
All right. Thank you so much, Wayne. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye. See you soon. Bye-bye. And that's Helen Li. And maybe a plug for Clubhouse. I think it's a fascinating, amazing place to be if you want to get to know like-minded people. If you want to learn, knowledge, even wisdom. Like I found Helen Li from Clubhouse, and she's someone that I wanted to bring on, immediately after I heard her moderating a room and discussing about Asian American creatives and how they can actually make a difference, and how they can actually even break stereotypes on social media. So lots of inspiring conversations over there in Clubhouse. And I'm also doing some podcast shows and recording with my guests in Clubhouse these days. So it's definitely the place to be. And you've probably read about how they are valued at $1 billion already, even though they are still iOS only. And only like 2 million subscribers, right? Or people who download the app and actually use it or become active users. So it's growing every day. And I think it's just a matter of time before it's available on Android as well. So just to let you know, I'm not getting paid for doing this plug for Clubhouse. Just saying what it is, because it's really an interesting place to hang out and to share resources and information and knowledge. So with that, I'm going to sign off because I'm going to take a short nap. I think I have less than 4 hours, 3 hours of nap time before I wake up, refresh, and invite our next batch of afternoon session panelists and speakers who are going to be sharing even more knowledge, wisdom, and their experience, from doing their podcast with us, with our PodFest Asia community. So stay tuned for that. I'll be back, and just look out on our pages and social media groups to find the lineup for our next session. I'll see you very shortly. Wayne Chung signing off. Goodbye.